My guest on the show today is Jesson Bradshaw. Jesson is the CEO of Energy Ogre, an electricity management company that uses proprietary systems to ensure its customers are always getting the best price on their energy and electricity. And as I've gotten to know Jesson a little bit, a long-time suffering Texans fan, especially this year. We're recording this in early 2022. The playoffs have started. Your team isn't there. My team isn't there. So we could probably have a 50-minute session on why we're sad, but I think we have some better stuff to talk about. So thank you. Welcome, Jesson. Good to have you on today.
Thank you. I think the definition of long-suffering Texans fan is basically anybody that's followed the team since inception. Because I just don't. I mean, they get all excited. They'll put, division champions up. It's just like, it's bad. It's bad. Yeah. It's never been good. So
yeah. Well, I didn't share this with you because I didn't want you to leave without doing the episode because I really want to talk to you. I'm a Vikings fan first. I'm a very close behind Chiefs fan, and I know what the Chiefs did to the Texans 2 years ago. Weren't the Texans up 30-0? Or they're up like
it was almost like the equivalent of the Bills game from the Oilers era. So I mean, they started. I think they muffed a kickoff return, and it started. It was like at the beginning of the second half. I think they muffed a kickoff return, fumbled it, it got returned for a score. So they did. They get Mahomes started and forget about it.
He's a beast.
He's a monster.
Well, thanks for being on. You're coming to us from.
He's a Texas kid, though, so he kind of gets a little.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Was he A&M?
He went to Tech.
Texas right?
Tech,
yeah. Well, his dad was a pitcher for the Twins for a long time.
Pat Mahomes Sr. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks for coming in. You're coming into us live here today, not live for people listening, but live for me from the great city of Houston.
Yeah, so it's cold today. Not cold for you, but you probably out here in shorts today. But it's cold for us. So
I love talking to guests from other areas. They're like, "It's so cold today. It's like 48 degrees." I'm like, "Dude, it's like 5 degrees here."
Well, my oldest son lives in Chicago. He just moved up there, and this is his first winter. Oof. So he was like, "Yeah, I want to change of pace." I'm like, "You're gonna get it."
Yeah, you're gonna get it. Yeah, I grew up in the Twin Cities, and man, does it get cold in the Midwest in the winter. That wind blows across, and Chicago blows across the lake. Whew.
I lived in Calgary for a while, and I can tell you, I feel like Chicago is colder than Canada.
It is,
no question.
It's so cold.
Yeah,
by the lake, it's so cold.
Yeah.
All right, Jesson. So we're gonna have a fun conversation here. We'll do a little more. We'll probably have a little bit more of a pity party around football. It seems something we can bond on at some point. First of all, it's a little too on the nose though. So, Jesson, what's something that you nerd out about?
Well, I mean, basically the whole electricity business. It's one of these weird things that, like most people, when I first, when I was in college, this is the last thing I kind of thought I would be involved with. I thought I was going to be a chemist or go to medical school, and I ended up, in this weird little company that was starting right around deregulation. Well. In the mid-'90s, the wholesale market at the federal level started to change. It got liberalized, very similar to, some folks listening or watching might remember it used to be the airline business was regulated, right?
Right, yeah. And like so TWA and Pan Am, and that was like the big conglomerates.
Yeah, and so there was just a couple, and then it got opened up to competition, and so you had, the prices collapsed, plummeted, I was talking to somebody before, and I was laughing that I remember when I was young. This is, I'm almost 50. I remember when I was young, it was like a big deal to get on a plane. Like folks would get all dressed up, and
totally.
And today they're kicking people off because their privates are showing and stuff. So it's just such a huge difference. But it really kind of democratized that industry, and a lot of us will remember telecommunications, I had a girlfriend when I was in high school that when she would go, I'd go to Canada for the summer sometimes, or, she'd go to Ohio, and, I was talking to her, and I think I spend like $400 a month on long distance telephone, charges. Yeah. And now that you can call almost anyone in the world for, your base fee or whatever. So we've had that kind of same thing. And that was the idea that actually happened in the natural gas business as well, but it didn't really, people don't see it as much. But that was happening in the electricity business at the wholesale level. And so it was starting from scratch. It was this new thing, and I knew absolutely nothing about it. It's actually funny. I remember talking to somebody in the electricity business, when you start talking about how much energy you've delivered, it's like, hey, there's a megawatt or a kilowatt.
Yeah.
It's an instantaneous value, but it's not a quantity. So that's what they call it, a watt hour. Like, here's a kilowatt hour or a megawatt hour. It's this amount over this period of time. And so I was like, okay, yeah, sure, that makes sense. And they're like, okay, well, we got this schedule starting hour ending 17. I was like, wait, what? Hour ending 17? What are you talking about? And they're like, yeah, that's how we keep track of it. I'm like, you keep track of it when it ends, not when it starts? And I was like, man, I know so little about this stuff. I don't even know how to tell time. So I was like, man, there's like starting from scratch and they're starting from below zero. So, but it's a super interesting business. And, for those that kind of can get involved with it, but it's a constantly dynamic thing. And it's at the core of really our modern way of living, and everything we do really depends on it. But most people don't really understand it and have a lot of misconceptions about it. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, especially now there are a lot of emergent technologies.
Sure.
There's a lot of political will around things that, some of it's pie in the sky. Some of it, I'm afraid, we're going to waste a bunch of money trying to do some things that are not quite ready for prime time yet, but it'll get figured out. So, but it's a really interesting, dynamic industry, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. I was telling you this before we started recording. One of the amazing things, I love doing this for so many reasons. One of them is I get to talk to people where I'm like the person, I'm the person who's like, I don't know what a kilowatt hour is. I don't really care what a kilowatt hour is. I set up auto pay on my electrical bill, and every now and again I look at it and I go, wow, that seems high. Why is that high? I don't understand why, but I don't ever do anything about it. Like it's like a set it and forget it. It's like it's not an annoyance because I know we need it, but I literally don't know why it goes up and down.
Sure.
Yeah. And I was telling you, we live in the state of New York, which I believe is I think it's regulated.
Well, New York's been open in certain areas.
It is open. Okay.
Yeah. So, but it's been kind of like most places are like dereg light. And so, so New York really opened. There was a lot of competition. ESCOs that were out there. You'd still get your bill like from Con Ed.
Yeah. So
they would send out the bills to everybody. But if you had another provider that was, serving you, they'd be on that bill. But Con Ed still sends out all the bills. They're kind of the billing agent for everybody.
So they take a fee off the top as part of the an administration fee, regardless of whether they're the provider or not.
Yeah. So the way most of this is set up in the deregulated areas is that these companies are kind of split into three pieces. One is a marketing company that serves the customers. Another one is a power plant company or a generation company. Mm-hmm. And then you have the wires companies. So the wires pieces haven't really been, they're still highly regulated everywhere because they don't want multiple people trying to build transmission infrastructure everywhere. It's just a common infrastructure.
Yeah.
And it's a good business for the guys that are in that business. That's like what the utility business used to be. So if they spend $1 billion building infrastructure and they get that as approved as their rate base, well, they're going to get a guaranteed annual return on their invested capital. So it's like a big annuity for them. That's, you used to talk about, widows and I don't know, what was it? Orphans and widows, invest in utilities. It's guaranteed income. So that's the part that's still that way.
Yeah.
The energy business has changed. The electricity generation side has been changing, and some of the marketing company stuff has been changing too. But those marketing companies, they provide a very important risk management function. They're not just middlemen in that process as well. So it's worked pretty well, but New York has been kind of strange. They were really pushing for full bore deregulation or to open the competitive sphere, and then they got some outcomes that they didn't kind of like, and so they didn't let the market figure it out. So they started to really reel back things and make it, de facto very difficult for competitors to be in that space today. So
I feel like, just literally listening to you for like 3 minutes, I know more about this topic than 98% of the New York residents now.
That's so sad, though, but it's true.
It is, but it's the set it and forget it thing.
Well, power's weird because it's a totally ethereal product. Like we can't see it, touch it, and it's just like it's always there, and like, and
it's completely necessary, but also completely expected.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For sure.
It's like a right. I think I know we're gonna get back more into this. I actually have some more questions for you in another part of our interview. So Jesson, what's something that's inside of your comfort zone that might be outside of somebody else's? And I'm going to take speaking at length about the energy field off the table, because that is very obvious that is in your comfort zone. It's not in mine.
I'm such a nerd about that stuff. I don't know.
Well, it is how you make your living as well. So most of us are pretty nerdy about what we do to make our living, pay the bill.
No, I mean, I definitely, I'm kind of one of those people where if something sort of strikes my attention, then, I burn myself out trying to know and learn everything I can about it. So, not recently, but I've had this thing on a continuous basis where I feel like it's almost a second job, where I like to work on vehicles and cars and trucks. And so I get so much joy out of turning wrenches. It's just one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah.
So then that's another thing, for most people, especially with modern vehicles, how does that work? I don't know. I mean, there's a much broader base of folks that understand, the mechanics of the way a vehicle works, but I love that. I love the practical application. Sometimes when you see some of the solutions that engineers have come up with on some of these vehicles to solve problems, you're like, man, that is unbelievably, that is genius, So it's this guy obviously never intended for this to come apart, because this is impossible, So,
right.
But it's fun. Right. I really enjoy it. So
yeah. Have you worked on anything that you're especially proud about recently? You got anything cool sitting in the garage?
So I bought a Ford Raptor when they came out in 2013. That poor truck. I mean, I think I've taken it apart and just changed out all the suspension. We're going to go do this, and I've pulled apart and replaced, and then I should put the factory stuff back on over and over and over. So I wish the challenge I've got is it's probably in the city. I just don't have enough I wish I had a shop or enough room to, because something I've been starting to watch recently on YouTube is I'm just totally amazed watching some of these kids that are buying these salvage cars at auction, and they'll literally put them all back together. A couple. That's dudes.
Amazing.
It's amazing. It's there, and it's I don't know how to do that. We'll figure it out. And I love that attitude. So that's been a lot of fun to watch, and I wish I could do some of that stuff. Unfortunately, I've got a day job, so. But,
you got to run a company over there, take care of your employees and your customers.
I like to tinker. I like to tinker for sure.
Yeah, that's cool. So Jesson, what's something that's outside of your comfort zone that is inside of somebody else's?
Man, isn't it basically everything else, right? So,
you're like energy and tinkering. Yes, everything else.
Everything else. No. Forget about it. Tell me more. I mean, I think that there's a. I try to learn a little bit about as many things as I can, but I've kind of come to the conclusion as I've gotten older. I used to think that there were these, sage, wise people. And it's just I realized that a little bit's Wizard of Oz, that there's a lot of people that it's baffle them with bullshit or BS or whatever it might be. And so, I mean, I realize that there may be more stuff outside of more people's comfort zone too. They just may not be willing to acknowledge it. So,
oh my gosh, Jesson, I'm on such on the same page with you. I think that, first of all, fake it till you make it is a real thing that we all do. It's part of being a human and how we've learned to cope. But also the thing that I don't remember if it was. I think it's a Buddhist saying, but somebody said this. It's it's when you realize that you don't really know anything is when you actually start to self-actualize.
Sure.
And all these not prophets, but experts in this and experts in that. And I'm going to teach you the way to do the thing. You're so full of it, man. You're an expert in the energy field. I would consider myself an expert in a couple of things, but you don't know everything about the field. I don't know anything about what I do, and just be but there are people that represent themselves in that way. And I find it so interesting when people are this is the way we're going to do this thing. I'm you literally don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
But I think President Obama said something for him, what made a difference for him is whether you like him or not, is he said, I acted as if.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what because also and I don't know, we're around the same age. I'm finding in my 40s with children, I know you have children as well, that the only way you learn is by doing. And and people pretend like they know how to do things, but they've never done it at all. Like, how do you know this? Reading a book isn't going to do it.
Oh, for sure.
Talking to a mentor isn't going to give you what's going to happen on the. It's like being a as we're talking about football. It's like being an athlete. We can go to practice all we want, but you really don't know exactly how you're going to play in the last 2 minutes until you're in the last 2 minutes of the playoff game. You need to drive the field. So
sure, and anyone who's a parent can tell that. I mean, how many times have you tried to? You see a train wreck coming with one of your kids? You can try to tell them.
No.
You can't. Some of these things are just lived experience. You can't you can't convey that to them, and so that's 100% right. I mean, I think that's a good mantra to live by. Is like, I think I know, but I reserve the right to change my opinion in light of additional information. You know,
that's right.
This has to be that simple.
Yeah, nice, man. Well, so I was going to give you 5 minutes, and I'm going to give you 5 minutes. So not if I was, not hypothetical. So everybody in the world listens to this podcast episode, which would be amazing.
Awesome.
Not the case, unfortunately. That would be really nice. Right. But it's not going to happen. And everybody gets to hear you speak on one topic for 5 minutes. What would you talk to us all about, and what would be your call to action for us at the end?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I were able to do that, there is and not to bore everyone to like, oh, of course, shooting fish in a barrel, but I definitely talk to folks because right now, a lot of the conversation we're having about energy in general and electricity specifically, it's very front and center. And what I get concerned about is there's a lot of amazing things that will happen with renewable energy. And there's some reasons why I think renewable energy will win technologically anyway. It will. There's a reason that will be the case. I think as long as we continue to have advances in material sciences and, we can talk about that for 2 minutes if you want to, but
sure. Yeah.
There's a lot of people, I hear this all the time where someone says, hey, I got these solar guys coming, they're knocking on my door. They want to put solar panels, allows me to give the middle finger to the utility for forever. It's like, dude, that's just not the way this works. And there's a ton of misinformation that's out there that it's people can say whatever they want to say. What frustrates me is when a consumer or the consuming public has a bad outcome because they don't have enough information. They don't know where to go get information, or they're being told information that's not true that affects them financially. And that's what's so that information gap and that knowledge gap that the public kind of has about electricity specifically and about the way these things work. And it also is a little problematic because some of these companies and some of these guys that are out doing this stuff they're kind of taking advantage of people wanting to do the right thing. Like they think, they hear things in the news all the time and they want to do their part. So there are some solutions that are excellent. They work great. I just want people to understand, that there's some real technical limitations to some of these things that are not really being discussed. And so they may not, what you see is not what you get. Basically.
Yeah. I've got 2 questions for you before we go to a quick commercial. First one, what was the name of that company who had it was the big scandal? I think it was during the Obama years. There was the big solar panel scandal. Solyndra. They were they got like a huge grant from the federal government or something they did, and they actually went up. They actually became illegitimate, right? Like they went out of business.
They dry hold all their cash, and so they blew all their cash. They were supposed to be making solar panels. And I think they had some deal. Actually, it may be wrong, but I thought there was something up in New York State that they were doing some manufacturing up there. So they got a lot of DOE grant money to put some of these things in place, and that was. It was on the leading edge of some of that. So you definitely see that. You see that at the commercial and an industrial level, like the manufacturing side, all the way through to people that are getting tied up into 20-year contracts to buy electricity from these guys that are putting solar panels on their roof. Yeah, there's different parts of this along the way where I think, like anytime you have the amount of subsidy money, the amount of interest, and when there's a big spread, you're going to get really good actors and you're going to get a lot of really shady people in that mix. And when you combine that with a lack of a good understanding of some of these things, it's just you have a recipe for bad outcomes. Yeah.
All right, Jesson. So before we go on break, I'm going to ask you for a public service announcement. Since I've got you here, we've got a captive audience. This is perfect. I totally agree with you, myself included. We want to do the right thing. Like, I have young children. I believe that the planet could use more green energy. I have options for solar. What do I know what to look for to actually take action on some of these new initiatives or new offerings, that I don't end up in a situation that either it isn't what it's like? What should we all be asking for interested? Somebody knocks on our door, or we see a marketing flyer. What are we actually asking or looking for? Because it looks nice on marketing, right? It's a nice piece of marketing. It sounds amazing. What should we be asking or thinking about when we're making these decisions?
Well, I think first off, a lot of people's spidey sense, I think you kind of get that, but you realize that, okay, well, I don't know anything about this. Or someone says, yeah, we're gonna, the more grandiose the claims are, the bigger hey, you're going to be selling back to these guys, you're going to be making money on this thing.
Right.
And people get told that. So, and is it possible to put in enough solar panels that you actually export power back into the system? Sure. It happens here too. It's a lot of solar panels.
Right.
And it doesn't happen very often. Like, you have to be consuming virtually nothing, and it has to be like extremely sunny. So people kind of, the more grandiose the claims that someone is kind of telling you, that might give you a good indication. In some places, like in Texas, the average price that a residential customer pays might be, right now in today's market, might be in the 10 to 11 cents a kilowatt hour range. Mm-hmm. If I'm looking at that in California, the folks in California are paying, let's just say, from 26 to 30 something cents per kilowatt hour.
Wow. Okay.
So bringing solar in at 13 cents, it's a no-brainer. And not only is it required in some of the new building code over there, it actually creates some other issues for the system, because everyone has their solar generation during the same time, and then it all goes away at the same time.
Sure, so you got to have like capacitor, like some way to store that, right?
Right, and we don't have any storage at the grid scale, really. And this is the problem. This is what people don't understand, is that when basically we, as a general rule, there's some very small scale storage devices, but generally speaking, we cannot store wholesale power generation. So what is demanded right this second is what is generated right this second. We have very, very small limitations. It's always on a balancing act. And that's why it makes some of these other issues. That's the technology that will really kind of open up renewables. We have to couple them with some form of storage, whether it's a local storage. Yeah. And so that technology, I know people talk about, we have these lithium ion, battery backups in the homes. I'm not sure that lithium ion is the right technology for a stationary home battery setup or home storage, but it's. I think that these are these technologies that are we are literally like almost like maybe one step past Wright brothers in some of this stuff. We're literally on the bleeding edge of these emergent technologies. Better material sciences around creating batteries. I was watching something super interesting. There's a professor up at MIT in one of his labs. They're doing molten metal. So they have molten metal between salts. Batteries that are made out of. So you pull calcium out of the ground. You can do it all with local stuff. Yeah. So that's what we need. We need innovation, and we need advances in material sciences and innovation in that space. We don't need people shoving a one-size-fits-all solution, or someone from a political perspective saying this is the technology. We've never done that before, and the best ideas and the best technologies need to percolate to the front, and that's what will do us all better. And that's my public service announcement.
There it is. Thank you. I learned
more than 30 seconds.
No, it's good though. I learned a ton. The last thing I want to say is I didn't realize there wasn't really much in the way of storage. And this is a couple of years ago, this is a big news story, but they I used to work in cybersecurity. I always talk about how the electrical grid in the United States is a very fragile place, that if a bad actor, a foreign country, was able to actually do something there, it's a huge problem, because it's not actually that resilient. Like you said, it's like, we need this electricity. We're generating this electricity. Well, if you can somehow disconnect that, you can take a lot of people in. And, it's like what happened we were living in Brooklyn in Hurricane Sandy, and half of Manhattan was out. That creates a very scary place.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, the totality of our modern way of life absolutely depends upon the electricity being on.
Yeah, that's it, plain and simple. All right, Jesson. With that, we're going to take a very brief commercial break. We'll be right back.
The Talking to Cool People podcast is brought to you by Jason Frizzell Coaching. Jason works with amazing people who are looking to find and develop their passion and purpose and create their journey to wherever it is they want to go. Check us out at jasonfrizzell.com, Facebook, or on Instagram. Jason loves hearing from anyone who thinks it would be cool to connect, to be coached, or to be a guest on our show. Email him at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com or DM him on Facebook and Instagram. And now, back to some more amazing conversation on Talking to Cool People.
All right, Jesson, we are back. So, what else do you want us to know about you at this point? I mean, I feel like I know a lot about you now. I think we all do. Like, what else do you want us to know about you?
Oh man, I don't know. I love this job. I've talked about this before, but I started my career I was super lucky. Better to be lucky than good.
I agree.
But I started my career and I lucked out to be, absolutely right place at the right time. Have nothing to do with any gray matter, anything. Just right place. So much so, I actually met my wife at my first job. So I mean, it's like, had a lot of good things there, but I've learned a lot sort of and it doesn't matter if it's electricity or power or whatever have you. I've learned a lot over the years about, what's the right way to run an organization? What is, and a lot of it is like looking at either mistakes that I've made or watching mistakes that other people have made. So, that's one thing that I really enjoy here. This is the second business that I've started from scratch. And, certainly at the last one we did pretty well, did it better. This one has been tons of fun, but I really like mentoring people, or I really enjoy watching them, grow and develop professionally. And that's a big part of that's one of the fun parts about the job here is I get to really interact with a lot of, kind of young and up and coming folks and try to help coach them. And it's just a lot of fun. I really, really enjoy, and maybe it's just as a parent, maybe it's kind of a weird thing, but I really enjoy watching my children. There's this intense satisfaction that comes from watching them grow and then start to make a good decision. They've incorporated some knowledge,
right?
And you're like, oh my God, he just did that without me, like yelling. Yeah. I'm like, are you serious? But yeah, it's a different kind of thing because it's done in a professional sense. But it's fun to watch people kind of as they grow professionally develop a sense of confidence in themselves. Yeah, and I love that because I know that even if it's not here, and let's just say we serve one very small little area of the electricity business today, that someone's got, they really have a life skill. They have a skill of having confidence in themselves, learning critical analytical thinking skills. How do I assess a problem? How do I not get overwhelmed with the problem? How do I break this down into bite-sized pieces? Those are these kind of skill sets that I think can serve them, for the rest of their professional career. So it's weird. I love watching our business. I love helping customers. I love all these different things, but that's probably one of the most satisfying aspects of running a business and building a business.
That's awesome, man. Now, I want to spend a couple minutes here. I'm going to get another PSA out of you because it's my show. I got you in the hot seat.
Okay.
So you have a pretty decent sized team over there, right? Like you're not talking like you and one other person in the office. You have a pretty significant.
We got about 90, I think.
I mean, that's that's a good size company in the United States. I think that would put you on likely the higher side of the number of employees in the United States. If you look at the statistics, I think most businesses are like 10 and under, as they say, like statistically. So you have a team of 90 people. So that means obviously you're running the company. You've got your executive team. So you've got some organizational structure in there. The PSA I wanted to ask you about is for people listening that are looking either, and because you mentioned you have some younger folks, like, so this is for the younger folks listening. What's like, as the CEO of a 90-person company, you meet somebody, what's the main thing you're looking for? What, like, once they check off, like, hey, I want to know that they've got some, if they need a technical degree, or even if they don't, they got some basic stuff. What's the thing that has you go, I really want this person to come and join our team? What's the thing that really captures your attention?
For me, I think my takeaway has been over all these years, and especially doing some of these things, we do a lot of customer interactions and we do a lot of other kind of interpersonal interactions. And I get it. Some folks can get a lot of anxiety in a kind of a new situation. They might sort of struggle from an interaction perspective, but really being able, in addition to having all the perfunctory skill sets or some of those other things, it really matters how someone is able to interact with other people and the ease and fluidity associated with that. I think if you're looking at that, it not only helps you understand, someone like us, that so many, like everyone here really is in the customer service business.
Yeah.
We are agents and fiduciaries for the customers that we're managing through these processes. So when push comes to shove, everybody's got to be able to get on a phone, right? Myself included, and answer and deal with those things. So having that is a definite plus. It's not it helps. I like to believe that maybe we can help develop some of those things in folks that are otherwise, but from an assessment perspective, that's kind of the first thing that I look at is how is the ease of just the simple interaction that I'm having with somebody? Can they set aside, and some people can't, like, I'll have people, I'm like, dude, I'm just a lowly CEO. Like I am not the CEO. I'm like the dude that like signs paychecks. Like that's it. Like it's not exciting. I'm not special.
Yeah.
And they get all flustered and tongue tied. And some of the other folks, you just have to be able to talk to all different kinds of people. And I think that's a big skill set when I'm looking at that on the front end.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I think that's extremely valuable to think about and I think this applies at any point in our careers. The thing that it landed for me and all that is you really have an interest in people that are curious, open-minded, willing to, just to take a look at something. Like you said, I reserve the right to be wrong, like that sort of thing. Yeah. Which is, some industries that's not really valued that much. You're kind of valued for like, I know the right way to do it.
Yeah.
So
it's not a paint by numbers thing. Yeah. That's what's challenging is for us. What's happened is that over the years, all the simple jobs, the most of the drudgery kinds of work, which is, filing my TPS reports and all that stuff, we've built automations around all that stuff.
Right.
So the stuff that like the human beings are doing, it's higher order things. It's really pulling out a pattern like, hey, this is weird. I'm seeing this kind of, this provider is doing this. We're seeing this on these bills. So it requires some critical analytical thinking.
Yeah.
And so that's the determinant. Once someone can communicate with other people, that's a determinant that I see that really tells me where people are going to end up being able to go. Just can you stop, take a look at the situation, break down what you're seeing, and assess the situation? Because it's way more important to me that people understand the concepts. Like, I don't want it just to be like, I don't know how this problem is. I know how to solve this problem, but I don't know what this problem is actually about. Like, that's a huge issue. And so that's the next kind of determinant for success that I see is that, to your point, that intellectual curiosity about trying to get into the weeds of, okay, that's great. I know I'm doing this, but what does this mean?
Right. What's the point? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Nice. All right. So I'm going to take you off the hot seat and put myself in the hot seat for a minute, like I always do on the show for all the people listening. We don't know each other. Well, we do now. We've known each other for about 40 minutes. So, Jesson, what do you want to ask me that I can answer for all of you?
I think that, what are some of the most salient either points that a guest has made, in terms of organization, running an organization, or what are the most common types of key points that keep coming back over and over again as you start talking to people that are really running organizations or heading up different projects? What's the most important one, and then what are the one that kind of keeps coming up over and over again?
Yeah, I love this question. I'm glad you asked me this because I've done over 100 episodes, so I have a pretty good. So I have two things. One, I have a tremendous amount of knowledge, and two, I'm like, wow, there's a lot to pull from. I'm like, what are the common themes? So thanks for asking this because I've never truly thought about this. I think the common theme when I have people that run an organization or run teams is, and this is an interesting question because I started this podcast in January of 2020. So the context in January 2020 and January of 2022 from a leadership, I think a lot has changed from COVID, right? Like working remotely or just the world's changed. I think the number one thing that, and I will say this not to butter you up, but it is true. All the people who come on my podcast seem to be extraordinary leaders. So I also have a very.
So I'm the black sheep here.
Yeah. Okay. Except for Jesson. We'll talk about that later. But it's an interesting question because I feel like it's a little bit of selection bias. I'm like, well, I've talked to these amazing leaders, so they're going to give me kind of things. But the theme that comes through all of it is always treat people like people, not like a number on a spreadsheet. Like, and you had alluded to this is if I work for you, my motivations for working for you outside of I like a paycheck because I like, I need to make money and I want to support my family. But I may need something very different at a basic human level than the person who sits next to me. And leaders who try to treat everybody the same, it doesn't really work anymore. So the thing that keeps coming up, and you alluded to this, is the curiosity as a leader of like, hey, what's the thing that really motivates you? Once we've taken care of the paycheck and we know you're okay there, what's the thing that motivates you? For some people, they like to be congratulated publicly. Some people hate that. Some people for some people, you probably have people on your team that would love to have dinner with you and your family. Like that would make their year. Other people could care less. So it's like looking and actually being curious and asking as you're growing your team, like, what is the thing that would be meaningful for you as opposed to, this is the thing that I believe is meaningful for you. And I worked in sales for 20 years. So in sales, it's always about the money and trips and all that stuff. And you see this in sales over and over again. I coach a lot of salespeople and sales leaders. You see this over and over. Is it gets pretty standardized. Yeah, we all like vacations. I went on some really nice vacations on a company. Yes, we like to make commission checks, but just having lunch with your boss or having your boss call you, hey, how's the family doing? Like that can make a world of difference to people once you kind of get past that. So that's the first thing. The second one is the thing that I talk about is curiosity and being open as a leader that you don't. And I'm going to say this, I think one of the challenges for new managers, and I don't know if it's like this in your organization, but a lot of new managers get hired because they know how to do the thing.
Yeah.
They're like, they're the person who knows how to do that thing and they're good at it technically. So like, all right, we're going to put you in a management role so you can teach others. But then either the people that are working for them don't learn in the same way that they learn, or the market changes or something changes and they're stuck with that. So it's the fixed mindset, growth mindset, curiosity, and being open that the people who work for you might actually be the people that are going to grow you as a leader too, as opposed to you just needing to grow them.
Sure.
So those are the two things. It's like the reciprocal leadership cycle of we're always learning from each other and then treating people like humans. Like those are the themes over and over that come up.
Well, I'd say I love that last part there. I think that's such an important one. From a leadership perspective, it's not just you teaching them, but you have to be open to learning new things yourself. I mean, I've worked for some people that they were billionaires in this space.
Yeah.
That honestly believed that, I mean, I had this conversation with at least one of them that believed that because they had made so much money that it was an objective, obvious message from God that it was empirically clear that they knew more than I did because that they had amassed this fortune. And so it's an outward manifestation of their intelligence and their leadership capability. And those situations went predictably as you would expect that they would go given enough time. But that whole feedback loop, I think, is super duper important. Just because you're sitting in a position, whether it's a manager position or, CEO position or a division president position or whatever that is, there definitely has to be this 360 you have to learn something as well. I mean, you have to constantly be evolving and, continuing to sharpen your tools and add additional tools to your toolbox to be, incrementally effective. That's a super important one. That's hugely important. Yeah. I love hearing that.
Yeah. Is that something that you, at your company, is that something that you try and instill in the culture? Do you have
for sure.
You have I don't like the term open door policy. I think that's a little bit outdated, but kind of hey, it's okay for, we do 360 reviews, or you ask your employees, hey, what's going well in our relationship? How can I be a better manager for you? Because I had a couple times in my career, just thinking about this now out loud, I had a couple times that was never asked of me. Yeah. Never was it working. But I worked for mostly amazing people. I actually worked at the big AT&T down there. I worked at AT&T for almost 3 years. So when you were talking about the deregulation stuff, I worked for a company. I was there post singular, but I was, I worked for people that were singular, people that were AT&T wireless, and it was all when the Ma Bell stuff kind of split up. So
yeah, we definitely do that. We probably do it in our own way. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I find so interesting, and this is one of the cool parts of, we have folks here literally from all different kind of walks of life. I have tons of super young folks that, are early in their professional careers. I've got folks that are dinosaurs like me. I've got,
You're not even 50 and you call yourself a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Don't listen to your kids when they tell you that. You're not a dinosaur.
Were you alive when it was 19? So shut up. Yeah. But we have folks from all over, and I think part of this is maybe, I could probably be, working harder at some of this stuff, but I engage with the folks a lot. I try to make sure, and I'm always learning new stuff. If I'm not talking to our guys or our people or guys or our gals, if I'm not talking to them frequently, then there's little tidbits of information that they're giving me too, that these are important pieces of information for me to incorporate as I'm trying to figure out which direction we're going and how we're, plowing ahead forward. So I get just as much out of those interactions, I think, as I try to impart, and they may not even understand. Again, it gets down to this ability for folks to be able to engage with anyone.
Yeah.
And if I walked up to somebody and they're like, "Oh my God, the CEO's over my day," that stuff doesn't help anybody. They
probably do that internally sometimes. They're like, "Wait, it's the end of the quarter. Why is he here?" Right.
No, I actually had one of our young girls who's she's one of our developers, and I would talk to her and she would get so nervous that she would just start laughing. She would laugh. Yeah. And I thought, she's such a happy, no, she's terrified.
No, she's
and you were and I was like, oh my God, well, maybe I need to figure out how to fix that. So I don't want to, walk around in terror, but that's all good now. We actually talk all the time. So.
Nice. That's awesome, Justin. Thanks for sharing all that. Thank you for the question. It was really, that's one of the reasons I have this in my episodes, is because I don't know what my guests are going to ask me, and a lot of my guests I don't know. So it always has me be able to go back, and I've never had that question asked me. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
I hope that was valuable for you and for everybody listening.
For sure.
All right, we've got about 10 minutes left. So let's see, what else do I want to ask you, Justin? What's the thing that you're most proud of?
It's interesting. It's changed over time. I thought when I started my career, it was, when I first started, I was trading wholesale commodity electricity, and the guys that were the superstars, or what I thought I wanted to be, was the dude that was trading in a book, and he's making $10-15 million, trading.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
$20-30 million, and he gets a piece of his book, and this guy's bringing home, big dollars and all that stuff. And I thought that's what I wanted to do. And, by the time I was 26, I was running one of those teams, not because I was any smarter than anybody else. I was just dumber than everybody else. Everybody else left. So I was like the last man standing.
I'm picturing like a Wolf of Wall Street, but a wolf of a wolf of energy.
It was kind of like that. It used to be the Wild Wild West back then. So
you're ringing the bell when the big deals come in and stuff, getting all excited.
It was. Yeah, it definitely was closer to that. It wasn't that, but it was closer to that. Yeah. So, but my wife, who I met, and I talked about this, there was always this nagging piece that was there that said, that's great. I can make the company 10, 15. One year we made $105 million in 3 days.
Wow.
It was crazy.
That's pretty cool.
But and I wish, obviously I didn't get to keep any of that, but, I would go home and like, well, what? Like, it's awesome to take advantage of a locational price arbitrage and to be smarter, better, faster, or think through, see something before somebody else sees it. Or it's the psychology of, through my trading, what I was signaling to the market in my trades, I convinced this other guy that I was going to keep buying it or whatever. So there's just all these little different strategies of being in a box. But, I talked about it like, there's no social utility whatsoever. Like, it's awesome that I'm doing this from a purely economic, theoretical, making the markets more efficient by punishing inefficiency.
Yeah.
But that's not really changing anything in my world, right? Like, there's no kind of social utility in that. And so when I started the next company, that really evolved to, it was a little bit, we were doing a little bit of that. But it was the first time that I had started a company and all the mistakes that, someone makes learning. I've said this before to other people. I always considered it tuition. So I was like, man, I'm going to school. And the only
Very
thing that
expensive
really
tuition, depending on your entrepreneurial journey.
I tried to minimize the total tuition spend, but I really hated paying tuition for the same thing twice. And so, that was the worst. Like, oh my God, you got to take this class again. But my big takeaway there was, we ended up selling that company to a Canadian energy company. But my greatest sense of satisfaction in that job was we created 160 jobs.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That existed. Like we made sure that those kept going in the new world. It wasn't like it was a consolidation. We're going to get rid of a bunch of people. And I know that a lot of those folks, because some of them were, professional already. I know most of them have actually been able to rise through the ranks of the bigger organization. And now most of those folks are in those key positions.
That's amazing.
In the consolidated company. So that was hugely important to me. Energy Ogre has kind of been the pinnacle for me because, again, same kind of thing. We've been able to start from scratch. So not only are we creating jobs and am I able to interact with, we just look exactly like the community that we're serving. We look exactly like Texas, every demographic, every kind of part. And it's not by design. It was just, hey, we want great people, and it kind of just worked out that way. But we have all these amazing people, and I'm trying to, do my part to help them learn and grow, professionally develop the skills and give them exposure to different things, not like stick them in one little piece and part of the organization for 5 years. Like, hey, what do you have an aptitude for? Where, what do you want to learn more about? What interests you, and how can we try to figure out how to add some of those responsibilities, whatever that looks like. But try to really do a lot from that mentoring and professional development perspective, because I get a lot out of that. But we also have the kicker on the other side is that we're serving customers, and we're eliminating an extra spend for them that is unnecessary. So you're basically it's kind of been the best part of this is like when you're talking to elderly people that are on fixed income and you help them cut $1,500 a year out of their electricity spend, that's massively important and it's hugely impactful.
Yeah, it goes right to the bottom line, literally a cost savings. That's great. Right.
So it's kind of this cool thing where the customers, not some folks are, other executives and they don't care. I mean, I've got customers that we've saved $18,000 a year. Like that's,
wow.
Can you believe that?
They must, what do they like own? Is this Jerry Jones or something?
Folks that are like that. Yeah. We've got some of the biggest people in Texas. So,
wow.
So, and some of those folks, and nobody, even doesn't matter if you're a multi-billionaire, no one likes, getting taken advantage of.
No,
so
nobody likes to pay more than they have to.
Yeah. So, but what's fun is that when you have this curious staff that's, engaged, and you, at the same time, they get to come to work every day and they're helping people. Mm-hmm. Like that's the whole, and there's sometimes folks get confused and they might call and like, why is this? But they don't get it. They don't, there may be some misinformation, but when you're able to learn new things, and you're in a position and you're in a job that we are fiduciaries for our customers. Like it's a completely customer service oriented organization.
Yeah.
That when you have these good outcomes and these good sort of feedback loops that you're sort of engaging in with customers, and you're also learning at the same time, it's just been a ton of fun.
That's awesome, man.
I can't imagine doing anything that's more, emotionally and, socially satisfying for me to spend my time on, at least in the short term.
Yeah.
For sure.
Two more questions as we wrap up. One, do you want your kids to go into the energy business if they're interested in it?
I mean, I think yes. My oldest son, he's super interested in sciences. He's, very interested in material sciences, and there's so many things that can be done with, figuring out how to build, better, wind blades, or figure out how to do better energy storage, or whatever the case might be. So, until it's not fundamental anymore, I think it will eventually become commoditized, like fully. It'll be like a piece of equipment that we worry less and less about, but it'll be advances in technology and material sciences that gets us there.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's like Sammy Sosa said, baseball been very, very good to me. And I feel like electricity been very, very good to me. So.
Yeah, there you go. Awesome, Jesson. So people want to connect with you, and we just want to highlight this. A lot of people go on podcasts. They got books coming out, or they're speakers, CEOs they serve. You actually only serve Texas.
That's right. Now it's a portion of Texas. So.
Yeah, a portion of Texas. So you're actually doing podcasts to educate all of us out here who can't actually do business with you right now because it's regulated. So thank you for doing that. And this is kind of the perfect way to wrap. The reason I bring that up is, one, thank you for doing that because that's really cool that you spend your time doing that. As a CEO of a 90-person company, I'm sure there's a lot of things you could be doing right now. So, Jesson, last thing, leave us with some words of wisdom, and these should be short and sweet. What do you want to leave us with that we can think about and hopefully put into action?
Man, that is a total on the spot kind of moment. So yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that it just doesn't matter if it's in electricity stuff or anything that's kind of I would just encourage everyone to find their own spark of intellectual curiosity. I think we all have so many things that compete for our time. And whether it's someone coming to your house that wants to sell you solar panels that are, going to allow you to give the middle finger to the local utility, or you're going to get a check back from them for, $1 million a year or whatever it is. And I think most people would see those things coming. But something that I see is that we have so many things that are competing for our attention, that there's a lot of folks that are kind of taking advantage of us because we're not able to focus our intellectual curiosity and really do a deeper dive on things that we're being told from other people. Mm-hmm. And it's, whether that's in the political sphere, whether that's in your job sphere, whether that's in, energy related stuff, those are the things that I see. I don't know anything about politics, but I see this over and over again. And it's like a lot of folks will they incorporate knowledge and they incorporate information. But I think because we're so busy and we have so many other things that are going on, I'm not sure that we always kind of bring that bright line of focus of, does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, if I really actually step back and thought about that, that doesn't make any sense. And so, I think if we added more of that to our lives, we're going to have more intention behind the decisions that we make, and we're going to have more intention around the things that we choose to focus our time on and people that we want to listen to. So that would be my exclusive and probably very far-fetched word of wisdom.
I loved it. Well, Jesson, I want to thank you again for being on, for doing what you're doing with your company, for the leader that you are for your people. I'm sure that hopefully your team will listen to this and they will agree with it. I'm sure they will when they listen to it. And unless you're like, all right, we're all getting in a room and listening to this together, then that might be what we're talking about. They'll be like, no.
Oh, God, that guy.
Yeah, exactly. No. But yeah, thank you so much for being on. It's great to get to know you. And I'd love to have you back on again sometime, and we'll keep the conversation going.
For sure. Enjoyed it a ton.
Yep. Thanks, Jesson.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and give us a shout out, or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners because you're cool people too.